Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 108, What It Means to Be in a Place of Choice. So as you know, this month we're going to be focusing on what it means to own our choices, why sometimes it's hard for us to do that, and yet the benefits of living our life this way are numerous. This week, I want to dive a little deeper into what it means to really be in a place of choice, not just lip service, and ways to begin practicing it so that you can make life very different for yourself. So what I want to do today is to explore one of my favorite people in the counseling field who can be very controversial at the same time, and that was William Glasser. And the materials that I'm reading from today, I retrieved from the Glasser Institute online. You're welcome to go to that and check it out. Also, many years ago, I picked up his book, Counseling with Choice Theory, The New Reality Therapy. And his basic premise is that we want to focus on self-control. And he says the basic tenet of choice theory is to promote self-control so that individuals can increase their ability to make and act on responsible choices. He says the theory endorses the adoption of 7 connecting relationship habits that can be used in all your relationships. And when adopted, practicing the concepts from choice theory becomes a way of life. And there's also the opposite of those connecting habits, and they're the 7 disconnecting habits that we'll talk about. And those are basically all about the perception of external control. And he says that these habits actually can lead to the breakdown of relationships. Being disconnected, he says, can lead us to many of the problems facing human beings. Because, he says, we use the 7 disconnecting habits to control people. He says, utilizing these habits usually leads to misunderstandings and resentment. End of quote. Okay, so one of the things that's controversial about choice theory is that he believed that people are choosing to be depressed rather than doing something scarier. They're choosing to be anxious, or maybe they're choosing to have panic attacks and all of that. And so it goes against the medical model in the field that still has a strong grip that people are suffering from certain conditions, such as anxiety and depression, things like that. He did believe that there are certain neurological disorders and brain abnormalities that should be treated by a neurologist, but he says basically we're choosing to depress, let's say, or to be anxious because it's easier. It's the path of least resistance coping skill from keeping us from having to do very hard things. So, as you can see, I'm sure his work ruffles a lot of feathers. It's very fascinating, though, because over the years I've tried some things and tested it out. And it is interesting when you think about, for example, anxiety. If you try to force yourself to have a panic attack, you probably won't, because then you're in control. Whereas when we typically think of bad anxiety or panic attacks, it feels like it has us. It's bigger than us, and we feel overwhelmed, and the overwhelm feeds upon itself, and we feel like we're not as strong as the panic, which creates more fear and more panic. So there's something to be said for looking at what we struggle with from this angle. I certainly in this episode am not asking you to take on his theory, but I do want to think about and talk about and focus on choosing. That regardless of what's going on with us, there are always things that we can choose. You always hear me say, we choose what we think, feel, do, believe, and how we behave. Those are things within our healthy control. Nouns outside of our control, we have no control over. And so that leads us into what Glasser calls the 7 disconnecting habits. These habits in our relationships don't help us feel connected. They don't help us feel like we belong. They don't help us grow. For lots of reasons, most of them are obvious. We're not looking within, we're looking at them. We're looking outside of ourselves, trying to change things we have no control over. The first one he says is criticizing. We're focusing on what someone is doing wrong, did wrong, where they're not good enough. We're being critical of a noun outside of ourselves, a person, a place, a thing, a circumstance. Now, we do need to be critical of some things. We don't want to co-sign murder or abusive behavior, things like that. But we don't stay focused on criticizing. We do that to avoid looking in the mirror. We do that to avoid grieving the reality, perhaps, of something that we're criticizing that is really bad or is very upsetting. The next one, he says, is blaming. We blame to diffuse and distort. Yes, sometimes it is their fault. And yes, what they did was awful and it's continuing to cause problems in your life today. But the answer is to grieve, not blame. We can start out with blame, sure. We get angry and we're like, what the hell? But we can't stay there. We got to get underneath the anger and the disbelief and think about the vulnerable hurt and the disappointment and the fear and the sadness as well. The third disconnecting habit is complaining. Now, you've heard me say, you want to do healthy complaining. You need to do that every once in a while because you need to validate what's not okay for you. But then you know the drill. We can complain for a moment, but then what are we going to do about it? Whatever that may be. We can decide to make changes. We can walk away from a situation. We can grieve to acceptance around something. So complaining's cool because you want to validate, God, this week sucked, right? This happened and that happened. It was awful. And you share what went down with your friend or your partner. But then after you've done that, you bring it back to self. Okay, what do I need to do here? What's my part? The next one is nagging. Now you've heard me say we're nagging them because we're doing all the work for them. We're rescuing them. If you nag someone, you're doing all the reminding because you care about that thing getting done, but obviously they don't. You're trying to control them, to try to change so you don't have to accept, what if they don't give a shit about what happens or what needs to be done or about looking in the mirror or changing? That's a much scarier reality for you than just nagging them. Because that way, if you get them to do it, you don't have to face the fact that maybe they didn't want to do it in the first place. Maybe they just end up doing it to get you to shut up and get you off their back. But that doesn't solve the real problem, does it? We'll never feel okay until we can let go and know that they own it. They want to. They see the value in changing or getting something done or being responsible or being healthy or being nice to us. Until they own it, you own it. And if you own or try to own what belongs to other people, it never ends well. Again, that looking outside of ourselves, trying to control things. Glasser says the next habit is threatening. Well, that's obvious. Pushing someone away by threatening is trying to control them. Healthy boundaries are, I need to let you know that if you don't stop doing that, I might need to make a different decision. But that's where I tell you about me, not you. I don't tell you if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to you. No, that's threatening. That's bullying. That's, again, trying to control them. Maybe you'll scare them enough to stop doing what they're doing instead of you doing a riskier behavior, which is maybe setting a big boundary, letting go of the relationship, firing the employee, things like that. Those actions can come with a lot of risk and possible fallout. And maybe we don't think we can handle that right now. And finally, he said, bribing, rewarding to control. Oh boy. I could go on all day about the millions of insidious ways we can bribe. We can do something nice for someone. We can decide to pay for something. We can reward bad behavior by consoling, giving them food if you're a parent, instead of setting the boundary and letting go, letting the chips fall. So the 7 disconnecting habits, I think, Glasser's right. They're all focused on trying to change things outside of yourself by controlling them. All of these things are control. All about the outcome that we're trying to control and the outcome we're trying to avoid. So connecting relationship habits are very obvious here. I don't think I need to do a lot of explaining. But as you listen to these, just, not to be hard on yourself, but think about, did you hear any of the 7 disconnecting habits that maybe belong to you? And if so, that's okay. Totally changeable. What I tell clients is, even if you're not ready to let go of those old coping skills, instead just start practicing some healthier ones and know that the unhealthy and the healthy aren't going to mesh after a while. It's not going to feel like it's in alignment like we've talked about before. You're going to naturally want to migrate more and more towards the healthier stuff. It's going to feel so much better because it's going to feel more empowered. The first one he says is supporting, showing our love and support for people that we care about, causes that we care about, being there for other people in ways we would like to have them be for us one day. If you're a parent or a caregiver, supporting because it's the right thing to do. You can feel good about yourself. This ties into our values big time, and I think it ties into a sense of meaning and purpose in our life. Why be here if not to care for one another, as an example? Encouraging is the next one. Are we so busy that we forget to stop and say, hey, hope that goes well for you today? Or I believe in you. I know how hard you've been working at this. Don't give up. Going to be okay. We'll figure this out together. Caveat here, not to fix someone's feelings. Let them have their feelings. Don't immediately shut it down and say, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You're being crazy. You're being silly. No. Hearing them out, using empathy and say, I get it. I know you're scared. And I also know that we can sit down and figure this out. Empathy first, encouragement second. Speaking of empathy, his next one is listening. Like really listening and not listening for ourselves to where, what is our reply going to be? How can we make it better for them? How can we feel good about ourselves by fixing their feelings? You see all the control things? We can still screw this up trying to connect. Instead, not making it about our agenda all the time, really trying to hear, showing genuine interest. Step in their world for a moment, step in their shoes. Remember, if this was your kid, remember when you were little and scared or in awe of something simple. Remember the last time you were frustrated or angry or excited or afraid. Then you can really step in their shoes. And this is hardest to do when they're upset with us, right? The next one, accepting. And I think that means knowing how to grieve and let go of control. Coming to acceptance is a phrase I prefer. I don't think it's realistic to say, well, okay, I just accept that. Yeah, I don't know about that. Especially when you're very invested in whatever is going on. How can you just immediately accept? I think we step over the grief process and stuff our feelings when we immediately forgive someone or accept the reality. I think first we need to acknowledge our feelings, why those make sense, why anyone in our shoes would feel upset, angry, hurt, scared, frustrated, disappointed. Then eventually get to a point where, okay, there's nothing I can do about this. I need to accept it. The 5th connecting habit is trusting. Now, I added in here, trusting trustworthy people. Building trust and being reliable yourself. Being who you want other people to be. Trustworthy people, do they have the capability to be relied upon? Have they blown it with you 16 times already? Are they trustworthy? Do they have good boundaries? Do they have basic self-esteem? If not, keep walking. Also trusting the process, letting go of all the things we can't control, which is how things roll out, what's going to happen tomorrow. His next one is respecting. Just respecting, choosing to respect. And I put in here, we don't have to agree or condone to respect another person's thoughts, feelings, needs, or boundaries. We don't have to agree with the law to respect it. It's a choice. It's a choice that says, do I want to fight this battle? Do I want to try to change this? Because, there are some causes we should definitely fight for. But is it my fight to fight? I don't know. I want to choose that. And finally, Glasser says, negotiating differences. And do I agree with him? I think it means healthy boundaries and the ability to detach so you can focus on your choices and allow others to have theirs. To learn how to negotiate is so, so important in our relationships. And guys, I can't tell you how many people don't know how. Most of the relationship coaching I do is really teaching boundaries, detachment, owning your choices, and learning how to tell the other person what you're willing to do and not willing to do, risking, right, them being pissed or frustrated or walking away from you, and respecting the same for them. Learning how to grieve is a part of this, so everything works together. So those are the 7 disconnecting habits that can hurt our relationships. And there's 7 connecting. So hopefully you found probably enough on each list. Some to feel good about, some to work on. What I like is the idea of habits because, like we've been talking about all along, the brain automates about 85% of what we do. The work is front-loaded. Build the habit. Work on the habit. Take one thing at a time. Go all in. Make it a habit to where it feels weird when you don't do it. To where it feels weird to not say, how was your day today? To where it starts feeling uncomfortable to overstep and try to fix someone's feelings. Get it to the point where it's going to feel weird not to do it. Then you know you have created a good habit. And just keep doing it. And if you screw up, get up the next day, get back on the horse. When we bring these things down to practicing and new habits, we don't have to be perfect and we don't have to get it perfect all the time. We can aspire, we can work on, we can practice. I like this because if we think it's perfect or horrible, the first time we blow it, we're going to throw in the towel. And we will go back to the safety of old dysfunctional coping skills. And you know what those are, right? Just habits you created a long time ago and perfected over the years. Do you see the simplicity of it now? So like we said last week, sometimes we really struggle to feel that internal locus of control. That takes a while to shift that for some of us. That's a big deal. That's a paradigm change. If you are so used to feeling beat up by the process, victimized, powerless, maybe manipulated and abused out of your sense of personal power, which happens every day, it's going to take a minute. It's going to take what it takes. And I don't want you to give up. I just want you to start. Know that if it's already bugging you, you've already started. And that's okay. Then just put one foot in front of the other. Get some accountability and some coaching around this, please. Get some therapy if you need it. Get some folks around you who will hold you to the truth and love you through it. Because I want you to be confident and I want you to trust yourself. And if it doesn't come as second nature, it only means that got messed up. If you don't feel like you have a lot of choices, it's probably because you have toxicity around you and you've been afraid to own your choices. It can feel so overwhelming to even imagine doing that. You can be so afraid of not even knowing what to choose because you become so disconnected from yourself. So when we look at choice theory, we look at how Glasser says it's all about relationships. He believes that. Love and belonging. Everything is love and belonging at the end of the day. I want you to love and belong to yourself. And at the same time, let people love on you a little bit. Internalize some of that acceptance. We need that. We need to feel like our shame sponge that I have talked about before can dry out a little bit. That we're okay. Like, okay, we don't like how we got here. We're not proud of it. But it's okay because we can change it. I want you to keep telling your brain, it's okay, we got this. We can turn this around. We can make things better. We can live differently going forward. Use the detachment phrase. Just because before, up until today, I used to do this and do that and not be able to do this or that, to not be able to own my choices as well as I would have liked to. Doesn't mean I can't do it today. Doesn't mean I can't really turn that around. Because I can. Because you can. All you have to do is choose to do so. So how do you practice choice making? Well, these are some things to think about. There's a million other facets to this, and I just want you to know that once you start this ball rolling and you keep focusing on that's a choice, that's a choice, that's my choice, things will reveal themselves to you, I promise. You'll start understanding maybe what you have outsourced. First one is I want you to start noticing and owning how you feel and why that is valid. It's important not to write off or disown what's going on with you emotionally. Remember, we can't own the self if we are disconnected from how we feel. I don't care what you think about those feelings. They may be overdramatic or seem irrational, and that's okay. I want you to validate it and create self-trust. Take yourself out of the situation. Imagine someone else sitting here. What might they be feeling and why? And why is that okay? Think of your best friend. Think of someone you really admire. If they were sitting in this and they felt this, why would that be valid? Then own what choices you have around the situation now. How do you want to respond? How do you want to take care of yourself? If you're typical, you're going to come up with some that aren't so fabulous. Like I could just blame them. I could say, screw this and walk away. I could not tell them the truth. Down the continuum to, I need to own what I did because I want to feel good about myself. Things like that. What would be the healthiest choice or choices and why? Like, do you yell at your partner because you're mad, or do you figure out the boundary issues, tell them those, keep the focus on yourself? Just start noticing how you feel and then start thinking about, what do I want to do about that? And sometimes we just do nothing. Sometimes we just say, I'm just having a shitty day and I'm just going to curl up, not hurt anyone, and, wait till tomorrow comes and tomorrow will be a better day. A lot of the internal work in this process, as you can see, is trying to sort out what's the healthiest thing to do. Now, we need healthy folks sometimes to bounce this off of too. If you have had toxicity around you and unhealthy behavior around you, you need healthier people to say, well, you have a right to say no to him. Or what boundary are you going to set for yourself? Or this isn't something you can do anything about. Maybe you have to grieve. We need that reflection back to us, that feedback and that validation. Second thing to do to practice choice making is take responsibility for all the areas of your life. Take out a whiteboard, a piece of paper. I want you to draw out each area of your life, like your financial, your relationships, your health, your career, your community, your goals, those things. Write about how much are you taking ownership of how things are in each area, in terms of what you can control, of course. How healthy is your choice of partner and friends? How reliable and mature are you in your relationships? What about your health? Are you taking care of your physical, your emotional, and your spiritual health? If not, write down some things you can begin to do. Because we all want to feel congruent. So you want these things to be in alignment with who you are or who you are becoming. We need congruence to feel confident. We need our insides to match our outsides. And we need to make sense to ourselves and to other people. This is not an exercise to be hard on yourself. You just be realistic with compassion, and knowing that you can start making changes right away is going to help you be honest and feel better about getting honest with it, and then choosing. The next thing you can do is start to create some mindfulness around all the millions of choices you make all the time, every day, from getting out of bed to wearing those shoes, to eating that food, to making that phone call or not. Go through your day and your week and just take note how many things you were able to choose. Things you don't even think about anymore. And what do you think about those choices? How conscious were you? I mean, there's a big one. Because our brain automates stuff, we don't pay attention anymore. That's how we can get into some bad habits, because we're not thinking about it. We just do it. And that's why mindfulness is really important. You're not being hard on yourself. You're not being anxious. You're just noticing. And I want you to use the phrase, well, that's interesting. Be neutral. Be nice to yourself. We can't shame ourselves into better behavior, remember? The next thing you can do is catch yourself when you want to go and outsource the responsibility, because maybe deep down you feel shame, regret, guilt. The first thing we want to do with those feelings is get them the hell away from us, right? So we'll find quote unquote easier ways to deal. We'll rationalize the shit out of stuff. We'll tell ourselves, well, I did it because, or if he hadn't done that, I wouldn't have done this. Catch yourself when you outsource or want to go and outsource. Don't be hard on yourself, just acknowledge. You'd be amazed how often we can choose to cover things up for ourselves because we're afraid to own it. Sometimes I think if and when we're ready, it helps to tell on ourselves to someone who's really emotionally safe, who isn't going to judge you, who knows you and loves you anyway, so you can get it off your chest. Another thing you can do is watch your talk. How do you sound? Like when other people are listening to you, does it sound like woe is me and because of them I have to or I should? How do you sound? Do you sound like you're reactionary, trying to always put out fires and chasing crisis after crisis? Or do they hear you say, I prefer, I'm choosing, I know it's mine to decide, I've decided, I own that screw up, that one's on me. Maybe I wasn't looking where I was going, or I was rushing, or I was stressed and wasn't paying attention. Owning it. Notice how you talk. How we talk is how we behave, because your subconscious is hearing everything you say and how you say it. Just even changing how you talk is going to change you. Because you know why? Eventually it's going to be really hard to be taking ownership in your speech and your behavior doesn't match. It's going to really bug you after a while. And other people are going to start calling you out. Trust me. Next thing you can do to practice is try to stay focused on your part in the situation. I don't care if what they did was so egregious compared to your part. Doesn't matter. You still had your part. Your feelings detached from theirs. Your opinion detached from theirs. Remember, just because they doesn't mean I. Your needs, which are just as valid as theirs. When you're in choice, there's no more better or worse, one better than the other or one less than the other. We all have equal rights to our feelings, needs, and choices, and none of us is better than the other. And finally, keep reminding yourself throughout the day of what you can't control. You can't control their thoughts, their needs, their behaviors, their opinions, their choices, their ignorance of the truth or ignorance of your truth. You can't control situations that just happen, outcomes you didn't want. All of it. Detach and grieve. Then hopefully one day be able to let go and refocus on what you can change. So today we talked about choice theory and what it really looks like to either own your choices or not. We explored ways to begin practicing right now to start taking more and more charge of your life bit by bit. By owning all the big and little things you can control. Things you want to take responsibility for so you can feel good about yourself. Thank you for joining me today. May you stay healthy, in choice, and hold on to hope. Focus on the good in yourself and in others today. If you want to check out the Choice Theory resource, I put it in the show notes at ownitpowercast.com. You can also go there to sign up for the newsletter that comes out each Tuesday, and that's where you get the bonus downloads from the episodes. So, pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.